As the country grieves yet another mass shooting, people are asking the question, how are minors getting a hold of guns and what's being done to combat the problem?
Well, news anchor Olivia Deese has an in-depth investigation on the issue with security camera footage of a shooting never seen before on television and her news extra, Underage, Under Fire.
It's not the newest shoes or the latest video game making you popular anymore for a lot of kids in the state of Alabama. It's guns. And local authorities say hundreds of kids in our area have them and are not afraid to use them. And that's one fact one Montgomery man knows all too well.
Right at the time they would have been beginning to enjoy young adult life, they decided to throw theirs away.
In April of 2010, two boys walked into a Shell station on Atlanta Highway in Montgomery, and Jacob Kelly just happened to be there.
And I walked into the convenience store just a couple doors down, and just as I was paying, the door burst open and somebody pushed against my back and had his hand over my left shoulder with a gun pointed at the cashier. And I heard a second person yelling, and they were knocking stuff over. And it didn't take too long. The whole thing was probably a minute and a half, maybe.
The pair were in high school. One was 14 and one was 15, both armed with loaded weapons.
I heard the gunshot and I felt a snap, and I was already on my hands and knees. So when he shot me, I sort of just collapsed onto my left side. And immediately I noticed my legs don't move.
He was paralyzed from the waist down after being shot at point-blank range in the back by the 14-year-old. Two kids with guns committing violent crimes, and the problem still exists today. Montgomery District Attorney Darrell Bailey sees it regularly.
The juveniles that I see, almost all of them have a firearm, either that they've used in the crime or that they were caught with when they were arrested for a crime. So we see a lot of juveniles with guns.
And their reasons for having these firearms may be surprising.
I think it is a status symbol. It's like when I was growing up, whether it was shoes or particular clothing that you had to have, video games or whatever that you had to have. Nowadays, kids believe that they have to have a gun. If they're on the streets, they believe that if they don't have a gun, then they're the odd man out.
The problem is bad enough in the county and across the state that the DA's office has come up with a program where children can obtain cash rewards for turning in other children with guns.
Let's face it, your friends know more about you than your parents do. That's always been the case. So kids' friends know if they have a gun or not. And in this program, they can get $300 for anonymously reporting that person who has a firearm.
The program is successful, with more than 20 guns obtained in this school year, but it's not enough. Charging juveniles as adults, local authorities say it's necessary, but some state lawmakers here at the Alabama State House say it costs taxpayers too much money, and there are other ways.
Right now, it costs about $160,000 a year to incarcerate a juvenile. And there's a lot, studies have shown there's a lot more effective ways to deal with juvenile justice. It's a very complex subject, but you look at more funding for alternative programs such as mental health treatment, such as drug addictions.
State Senator Cam Ward is sponsoring legislation that would make it more difficult to sentence a juvenile to time in prison in hopes to influence the child early through outreach programs.
They start showing up on the radar screen, and oftentimes it's in conjunction with school. It's oftentimes in conjunction with local law enforcement. They start showing up before they even commit a crime that there's going to be a problem coming up. So having that opportunity to intervene and get them the help they need early on can prevent them from being a criminal in the long term.
These services would include programs such as mental health treatment, counseling, and help for drug addictions. But is this enough to prevent violent crimes in juveniles? DA Bailey doesn't think so.
There's a myriad of problems that's causing what we're seeing as far as an increase in juvenile crime. Right now the legislature is considering making it less harsh, less restrictive for juveniles. And I think that is the wrong direction to go. They're really trying to contribute to the problem in the sake of saving money. And I think that's the wrong thing to do at this time.
However, they both agree the problem begins at home. The family, obviously, you can't force the family to be that.
Oftentimes, the family is part of the problem. And unlike an adult, where when an adult gets out of prison, they go back to wherever they want. They can go live wherever. Whereas a juvenile goes back to the same broken family they came from to begin with, which is a perpetual part of the problem. But you can force them. We can force the parents to come into court and take some responsibility. And I think that's a big part of this too.
But you ask the kids how many of you are in a gang, and you're going to have 5 or 6 of them raise their hand. And that's in 5th grade. We've got to also equip parents with the resources and tools they need to know how to parent. There are a lot of parents out there that just say, I don't know what I'm doing. I've had parents tell me that, and I think, well, that's great. At least you're being honest about it.
Along with the community programs through the district attorney's office or statewide, the plea from someone who has suffered at the hands of juvenile violence is to just be there for that child.
It's okay.
There's got to be somebody that wants good for that kid. There's got to be somebody you can reach out to. There's so many reasons to, I can't imagine the reasons why people would go down that path of violence in the life, as a lifestyle. But there's got to be somebody around, a parent or a church member, somebody in the community that they could reach out to.
Kelly was able to make a full recovery after a year in physical therapy, though lasting effects of the gunshot still cause him pain. Both of the boys were sentenced to more than 60 years in prison each. At the end of it all, he told me he was able to forgive the boy who shot him. In Montgomery, Olivia Dees, Alabama News Network I-Team.
And if you'd like to find out more about the Juvenile Gun Reward Program, you can call Crime Stoppers at 215-STOP. And you can anonymously report a juvenile with a gun and could receive $300 if that gun is obtained by law enforcement.